In this video, we're breaking down every draft class in the NFC East, giving each team a letter grade, and we're going to start with the Dallas Cowboys, who I think knocked their first 3 picks out of the park. Tyler Guyton was the best tackle available at 29. He's got rare athletic traits in terms of size and movement skills. He just glides around the pocket. He's got effortless recovery and mirror ability in pass pro. Now, he's a converted tight end with very limited experience, so he is a bit of a project. I would definitely say he's more of a project than Tyler Smith was coming out, who I always felt the amount of development that he really needed was kind of overstated. But Tyler Guyton, I think, has a lot of work to do when it comes to hand usage. He is really good at playing patient and not overextending, but when it comes to having a forceful initial strike, that's where you can tell he's not that comfortable. He'll kind of bear hug bull rushes and let people into his frame. And then there's also a lot of plays in pass pro where he just loses track of his assignment. It felt like pretty much every pressure last year was him letting someone get to the quarterback as opposed to him getting beat. There are times he'll just be late off the snap, won't react to an inside counter, and he'll let someone go unobstructed through the B gap. So there's also some awareness stuff that needs to be cleaned up. And I think he has the traits and power to be a good run blocker, but his run blocking tape last year was pretty disappointing. He's kind of a waist bender, struggles to play with proper pad level, and he also has a hard time picking up his assignment when he's out on the move at the second level or as a puller. I love the Marshawn Nealon pick at 56. He has the dream build for a power rushing defensive end. He's a little bit shorter, so he's got that natural leverage advantage. He's 267 pounds and he has long arms. After Dallas Turner and Jared Verse, I think Marshawn Nealon was the best power rusher in this class. He's got heavy hands. He does a great job driving his legs and pushing the pocket. You want to see him diversify his moveset a little bit more. He's basically just all power at this point. He had a nice sack against Eastern Michigan with an inside spin move, but he doesn't really have like advanced hand usage or great bend around the edge, so he could end up being kind of a one-dimensional pass rusher, but that one dimension is extremely effective. And then he'll also be an upgrade to their run defense for sure. And I love the Cooper Beebe pick at 73, guard out of Kansas State with 48 career starts. He is a wrecking ball at the second level. I don't know if I've seen someone that puts linebackers on the ground at a higher rate when he makes contact. He has outstanding awareness in pass pro, really good hand usage, and he's just a tree stump against bull rushes. Hardly ever saw him lose to power on his college tape. The main weakness for Cooper Beebe is arm length, 31.5 inches. That is second percentile for guards. If he lets defenders get hands on him early, he can kind of get stacked in the run game. And he also had a few issues with cross-face moves because he doesn't really have that length to assist his recovery. But I really like this pick. I think he could be a guard, but could also play center and be a Tyler Biadasz replacement. Their second, third round pick, I didn't like as much. Maurice Leofau, linebacker out of Notre Dame. He has rare size and length for a linebacker, over 34-inch arms, longest arms of any linebacker in this class. He's really good at playing off of blocks, heavy hands to separate and keep his frame clean. He's a high effort player and I think has a lot of upside as a cover linebacker. He can take deep zone drops. He can carry wheel routes down the field, very decisive and assignment secure in zone coverage, but he just isn't a very instinctive run defender at this point. He'll be late to diagnose and he'll get kind of blindsided by second level blocks and get pinned to the backside of the play. And he also just doesn't consistently see things quickly enough to make a lot of plays in the backfield. And then he also isn't the best tackler. When he's able to wrap up, he has a pretty high success rate, but as far as mirroring shifty ball carriers in the open field, he's pretty stiff changing directions. So I probably would have gone with a different linebacker in this situation, but there is definitely some upside with Leofau. They got Kalen Carson at 174. I think this was a great pick. He has good size and elite explosiveness. His click and close is just instant. He basically treats screen blocks like bowling pins. He builds up so much speed so quickly and just barrels into them and blows up the entire play. He's really disruptive in press coverage, and then he's got some quick short area movement skills. The main limitations for Kalen Carson are speed and ball skills. He's not very comfortable turning and locating the ball down the sideline, and he had several dropped interceptions on tape. And then especially from off coverage, when he's got to open up his hips without making contact, he really struggles struggles to keep up with receivers over the top. So he might be someone that ends up playing slot, but I think in the 5th round, that's great value. And then their next 2 picks, unfortunately, I didn't watch. Southeast Missouri State wide receiver Ryan Flournoy. I thought he was solid at the Senior Bowl, but I didn't end up getting into his tape. And then Louisiana offensive lineman Nathan Thomas, I didn't watch him either. They also took Auburn defensive lineman Justin Rogers in the 7th round. He is a big nose tackle that's going to clog up the A-gap, but doesn't really add much more outside of that. He's not a good enough athlete to add anything as a pass rusher and can't even chase down like outside zone. And the one UDFA that I wrote up was Minnesota tight end Brevin Spann-Ford. He's a great run blocker, but some of the worst hands of any tight end in this class. He had a 26.5% drop rate in 2023, which is the highest drop rate for a tight end in PFF's entire database. So overall, I think this was a really good class, definitely top half of the league. I'm going with a B. Really liked their first 3 picks. Disagree with the Leofau pick at the end of the 3rd. And then I think Kalen Carson in the 5th was good value. Next up, we've got the New York Giants, who kick it off with Malik Neighbors, 6th overall. He was my wide receiver too, but he's also the 2nd highest grade that I've ever given to a receiver. He just has rare start-stop ability really in every aspect of his game, whether it's catching a drag route, turning on the jets instantly and outrunning the entire defense, or throttling down and back up on a double move, or just sinking his hips and decelerating on a stop route. His ability to gear up and down stacks up with anyone I've ever watched. He isn't the most technically sound route runner at this point as far as like eliminating every single wasted step and motion, but he has the change of direction skills to be an elite separator. If he can just tighten up his routes and become a little bit more efficient with his footwork, I think he could be like a Stephon Diggs, Garrett Wilson type of player. In the 2nd round, they took Minnesota safety Tyler Nubin. Very productive career, 13 interceptions and 13 pass breakups. He has elite instincts and timing, breaking on routes over the middle of the field. Really good eye balance to diagnose the route development, but also keep eyes on the quarterback and time his break with the quarterback's windup. And then he's got the size and length to play in the box. He's a reliable wrap-up tackler. The athletic traits are kind of limited. There are times he looks a lot rangier than he actually is just because he has such good instincts. I think his play recognition ability kind of has him running closer to like a 4.52 and jumping maybe a 34. But if he takes a false step, which doesn't happen that often, but when he does get into recovery mode, that's where you really see the athletic limitations. But I still had him at 52 on my board. I think he's a good enough player to overcome that. Now, the Andrew Phillips pick is where I really disagree with the Giants and seemingly every other draft analyst. If you're a Giants fan that loves this pick, don't let me ruin your excitement. There's a lot of other people that are big Andrew Phillips fans. He's extremely explosive, 42.5-inch vertical, 135-inch broad. That definitely shows up on tape. His ability to crash on flats and checkdowns from depth was really impressive. Despite being a little bit undersized, he's really competitive in the run game, does a good job playing off of blocks, but there wasn't much else on his tape that I really liked, unfortunately. He's one of the worst tacklers of any defensive back in this class, which is a big deal to me. He has kind of some size limitations there, but he also just takes reckless pursuit angles. He doesn't really have the man coverage fluidity that you want to see for a smaller corner, has a difficult time sticking with route breaks, and he exacerbates that problem by being so undisciplined with his eyes and his hips. He'll get influenced by route fakes and open his hips prematurely, and he can't flip back and recover. He has a bad habit of staring into the backfield and fixating on play action, and he'll let vertical routes run behind him. He's really aggressive biting on double moves and doesn't have the recovery speed to get back in phase. Xavier Legette beat him for a touchdown on a stop and go. I really didn't see the top 100 hype for Andrew Phillips, especially based on his college tape. He did have a really good Senior Bowl, and everyone else seems to like him, so maybe I'm wrong. Wouldn't be the first time that that's happened. I really like their next 3 picks. Theo Johnson is just a well-rounded wide tight end. He's got the size, blocking ability, and receiving skills to play on the line of scrimmage, play some in the slot. At this point, I do think he's more of just a seam runner in the passing game, but he's got the natural ability to develop as a route runner. There are a few times on tape where he'll get in and out of a break cleanly, and you can really see the separation upside that he has, but he needs to get more efficient with his footwork. He has a habit of kind of drifting into the top of the route and not separating cleanly. I love the Tyrone Tracy pick in the 5th round. Converted receiver, he's got the ball skills that you would expect, and he has a very unconventional running style, but he's just so creative in the open field. He's able to stack multiple moves together with hardly any gear down. His field vision and ability to just weave through traffic at the second level and find escape routes is incredible, especially for a player that's so new to the position. If he can just get a little bit more decisive, planting and accelerating when the hole opens up, I think he has 3-down starter potential. He's a great athlete, and despite being so inexperienced, he's actually pretty advanced in a lot of the technical nuances. And in the 6th round, they get Darius Muasau, linebacker out of UCLA. He's got a ton of experience, really good block shedder, quick play diagnosis, but he just lacks the speed and range to track down perimeter runs and to offer much value in coverage. And then I haven't watched any of the UDFAs that they added. So I'm giving the Giants pick a C+. The Andrew Phillips pick is the one that I really disagree on, but I liked pretty much every pick outside of that. Moving on to the Eagles, I think this was an outstanding class. Quinyon Mitchell was one of the better picks in the 1st round. I don't even think it was a crazy value pick. They got him 4 spots ahead of where I had him, but just in terms of scheme fit and positional need, this is a perfect match. He's one of the best corners I've ever watched in off coverage. He's explosive, planting and driving and closing up that cushion. He's quick to diagnose the route in single coverage. And then I wish he had longer arms, but he's got pretty good size and just blazing recovery speed. He rarely played press at Toledo. Only 8.7% of his snaps for the last 2 years were in press coverage. And he showed at the Senior Bowl that he's capable of holding up in press man. He still needs to become a little more disciplined with his hips and less eager to just open up with every route fake, but I think he definitely has press coverage potential for sure. And then they get defensive back Cooper DeJean, 40th overall. He's an explosive straight line athlete. He's got size, speed, and acceleration. I like him best at safety because I think he does have kind of tight hips when it comes to sinking with comebacks and curls. I also think his speed is good when he's playing top down, but when he has to open his hips and keep up with a go route, he will lose pace with receivers down the sideline. But with what he adds in run support and coverage instincts, I think he could be a really good nickel or safety. And the Eagles came into this draft needing an influx of talent in the defensive backfield. I think they absolutely accomplished that. I know the Jalix Hunt pick was a reach based on the consensus board, but this is actually about where I had him. 2 years ago, he was a safety for Cornell, and then he hit a growth spurt, transferred to Houston Christian, moved to edge rusher. He just has rare athletic traits and natural talent. He's got long arms, straight line speed, and an explosive first step. And for a player with such limited experience, I was expecting just pure athleticism on his pass rushing tape. And at his level of competition, there was some of that just, outrunning offensive tackles around the corner. But he actually has some pass rushing moves. He can win with a cross chop, double swipe. He's able to convert speed to power and really create lift on initial contact. And on stunts, he just teleports from gap to gap. He just has to add weight to be able to hold up in the run game. He's still just 252 pounds. He gets moved back by single blocks, double teams. I doubt he sees the field much early in his career because of that, but I really like him as a developmental prospect in the 3rd round. I didn't love the Will Shipley pick. He's kind of a 3rd down receiving back. He's a good route runner, but has inconsistent hands, and I don't really trust him in pass pro. His size limits his ability to hold up in pass protection, but there's also a lot of mental lapses and free hits on the quarterback. So even as a 3rd down back, I have a lot of questions, but Jalen Hurts doesn't even really target his running backs, so I just don't quite understand the fit. He is extremely shifty in the open field, and he's a very patient runner between the tackles. He doesn't have the contact balance or play strength to be that effective running inside, but he can find running lanes, wait for his blocks to develop. So I'm not a big fan of that pick, but I'm also not going to be that critical in the 4th round. They took Texas A&M wide receiver Anias Smith. He's got a lot of running back skills, very effective after the catch, but he's fluid in and out of breaks. He does a good job selling the top of his route to manipulate the corner and maximize separation, and he only had 1 drop in 2023, but he's undersized, doesn't have great speed. I had him graded a little bit higher. I did drop him some based on injury concerns, but if the Eagles are good with that, then I'll take their word for it. They took Jeremiah Trotter Jr., linebacker out of Clemson. This is about where I had him going. He's a smart player, good coverage instincts, undersized, but I think he's competitive, engaging with blocks. He just didn't have the the size or speed to really warrant a day 2 pick, but on day 3, I think that's appropriate value. I also like Trevor Keegan in the 5th round. He's got a ton of experience, very smart player, quick with his hands, but he's kind of an average athlete, struggles to mirror and recover if pass rushers are able to get the edge on him. Johnny Wilson in the 6th round, I obviously love that value. He's such a unique player, 6'6", 231 pounds, over 35-inch arms. Even for a tight end, there's very few players that have this kind of catch radius. He can pluck the ball over the middle of the field, doesn't need an accurate throw to bring it in, but securing the easy throws has been a major issue for him. He's got a 12.8% career drop rate, and the NFL kind of collectively rejected receivers with drop issues this year, with Johnny Wilson and Troy Franklin falling later than they were expected to go. But the reason I had a top 100 grade on Johnny Wilson is the fluidity at his size. He isn't just a goal line fade, jump ball, possession receiver. He can separate out of breaks. He's got really smooth footwork, especially on in-breaking routes. I think Johnny Wilson actually has some potential as a 6th round pick. And then their final pick, Dylan McMahon, the center out of NC State. I didn't watch. I saw him at the Senior Bowl and he was kind of getting embarrassed, so that performance led me to not end up watching him. He did test very well at the combine, so maybe there's some hidden upside in there. And then they signed 3 UDFAs that I had reports on. I'll put those up on the screen. Gabe Hall is an explosive Project 3 technique. Really good performance at the Senior Bowl, but his tape was pretty bad. Kendall Milton is a power back, limited speed, but really good vision and contact balance. And then McCollin Castles out of Tennessee is just a well-rounded tight end H-back type of player. He can block some, he's got good hands, but not the best route runner. And I'm gonna give this class a B+. I thought their top 3 picks were excellent. Probably would have gone in a different direction with some of their 4th and 5th round picks, but early in the draft is what counts the most, and I think they did a good job there. And finally, we've got the Washington Commanders, who start off with Jaden Daniels with the 2nd overall pick. That's not the quarterback that I would have taken, but I still really like Jaden Daniels and view him as a blue chip prospect. The speed and rushing ability everyone knows about, obviously, but his poise in the pocket, his consistent accuracy, and his ability to find windows in zone coverage over the middle is what really sold me on Jaden Daniels. Now, if you look at his target heat map, he didn't target the middle of the field that often. The slot fades were pretty much uncoverable, so that's how LSU ran their offense. But when you actually watch him throw over the middle of the field, he's got some incredible anticipation throws on tape. I do worry about his size combined with his reckless play style. I also wish he made more plays with his arm out of structure. He's either going to sit in the pocket and throw or break out of the pocket and run, but still I think a very good quarterback prospect and worth a top 5 pick. Getting Johnny Newton at 36 was one of the steals of the draft, although it seems like he fell because of injury, so hard to call it as much of a steal. But without any of the injury concerns, this is a 1st round prospect all the way. He's quick and explosive. He's the best defensive lineman in this class as far as hand usage. He's got so many different pass rushing moves. He's quick to access his counters. If everything ends up okay medically, I think this is one of those picks we look back on and just wonder how he fell to the 2nd round. And then Mikey Sainristil at 50, I think was a solid pick. I pretty much love everything about Mikey Sainristil in zone coverage, but in man coverage, I think he's extremely limited. So his success, like most players, is going to be determined by usage. If they've just got him in hook zones, eyes on the quarterback, making plays on the ball, I think he's going to be extremely productive. His instincts, route recognition, ball skills are all top tier. Despite his size, he's a really good run defender, hard hitter in the flat, and outside of the Alabama game where he had a couple bad misses, for the most part, he's an extremely reliable tackler. And then he also seems like one of the smartest, high character type of guys in this class. There's usually only 1, maybe 2 players that I actually raise their grades for off-field mentality type of stuff. And Sainristil was one of those players. Just listening to his interviews and then hearing pretty much every person that's plugged in just rave about how hard of a worker he is, how smart he is. I got the same kind of sense with Trent McDuffie a few years ago, where you can tell it's more than just the standard fluff, yeah, he's a hard worker, great locker room guy, bought into the program, blah, blah, blah. The main limitation, like I said, is just man coverage. He is very ineffective in press. He doesn't have the ideal recovery speed and not very good at mirroring routes and sticking tight to the break. So he's usage and scheme dependent, but as long as you're using him correctly, I think he's going to be a great player. Their final second round pick was Ben Sinnott, tight end out of Kansas State. I had him as my tight end too. This is a little bit early for me, but I actually don't hate the pick. I like most of his tape. I just don't think he played like quite the athlete that he tested as at the combine, but he's a really good route runner. He's deceptive setting up his breaks. He's not a true Y tight end that you want consistently blocking defensive ends, but he gives maximum effort as a run blocker, especially against linebackers. He's got some dominant run blocking tape, and then also did a lot of really good work at the goal line, just creating displacement off the line of scrimmage. He has reliable hands, good focus at the catch point, not as effective in contested catch jump ball situations, but he's just a versatile, well-rounded tight end prospect. And even though I had him ranked a little bit lower, I don't hate this pick at all. And then TCU tackle Brandon Coleman is a massive reach on my board, but this is a player that I already feel like I had graded too low. So I watched his 2023 tape and it was not very good, just really lacking balance, body control, consistent hand usage. He had, I think, the third highest athletic score of anyone at the combine, so I did give him a slight bump because of that, but still viewed him as more of a day 3 prospect. But then I saw Brandon Thorne on Twitter say something about how like you've got to go back to his 2022 tape to really see the real Brandon Coleman. Apparently he was dealing with an injury that kind of lingered throughout the entire season in 2023, and I went back and watched 2 games from the previous year and he looked like a completely different player. I didn't end up having time to get through enough 2022 film to really change my grade, but I could easily see him getting back to 2022 form and this being a missed evaluation for me. So I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt with this pick. The first pick I really didn't care for was Luke McCaffrey at the end of the 3rd round. He's one of the best contested catch receivers in this class, 2 consecutive seasons with a contested catch rate above 60%. It's not only the play strength and the ability to high point the ball, it's the focus at the catch point. He's fallen out of bounds. He can make some incredible acrobatic catches, but I just really didn't see the burst or lateral quickness to be a high level separator in the NFL. He doesn't really have a plan to defeat press coverage at this point, so I viewed him as more of a day 3 player and definitely my least favorite pick for the Commanders. I like the Jordan McGee pick, linebacker out of Temple. He is one of the best cover linebackers in this class. He's so alert in zone coverage to connect to his assignment. A lot of these linebackers coming out are just sitting ducks in zone coverage. They sit there in the same spot and cover grass. Jordan McGee is proactive locating his assignment and he's got the movement skills to stick with receivers down the field. He just doesn't have ideal size and is a pretty unreliable tackler. That's why I ended up with a 5th round grade. Their second 5th round pick was Washington safety Dominique Hampton, really athletic box safety. He can play press man on tight ends. He's really assignment secure in zone coverage. Not someone you want ideally in like off man coverage against receivers. He'll panic and kind of get turned around against more skilled route runners. And at his size, I definitely wanted to see more from him in the run game. He doesn't really use his length to take on blocks and a very inconsistent tackler. And their 7th round pick, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, I had a 5th round grade on him. He has good size and length, definitely needs to fill out his frame some, although I think he played at a heavier weight than he weighed in at the combine. He's a really good run defender, does a good job stacking and shedding, sets a firm edge, and he has the traits to improve, but he's just not a very effective pass rusher at this point. His hand usage isn't that coordinated. He misses a lot with his hands. The timing on a lot of his moves feels rushed, and then he really struggles to generate any displacement as a power rusher, but definitely worth a flyer in the 7th round. I had a couple of their UDFAs written up. Tyler Owens is a pure project at safety, but arguably the best athlete in this class. And Sam Hartman has a lot of experience, quick release. He's a good touch thrower, but doesn't have a very strong arm. He's undersized, not a great athlete, and some erratic decision making on his tape. So I'm gonna give Washington's class a B-. I really like the Johnny Newton pick. I like what they did on day 3. Sainristil, Sinnott, and Coleman might have been a little bit earlier than I would have taken those players, but I understand the logic behind those picks. I disagree with the Jaden Daniels pick, but I still had a really high grade on him. It's not like they took JJ McCarthy 2nd overall, so it'll mostly come down to Jaden Daniels, but I think a really solid draft in Adam Peters' first year.